And welcome back to All Day Live. It's 1:26 on a Monday afternoon. It is warm. It is kind of almost hot out there. Pretty breezy. Broke some records yesterday, so hopefully you're finding a nice, comfortable place to be today. A couple of things that are making headlines nationally that have impacts on people like you and me, and we wanted to break it down just a little bit. So first, we're going to talk about, we're going to roll it all into one interview here, tariffs. So President Trump saying that he believes the U.S. has achieved what he's calling a total reset in relations with China. Both countries have agreed now to reduce tariffs for 90 days. I haven't seen when exactly that's going to get started, but basically the U.S. has agreed to drop to a 30% tariff for Chinese goods, and China has said that they'll lower its rate on U.S. goods to 10%. The markets have been responding, a big surge today. And then the other piece of this that we're going to kind of wrap into this interview is talking about this executive order by President Trump that he calls one of the most consequential in American history. He says he's reducing U.S. drug prices by 30 to 80% almost immediately, bringing them in line with the rest of the world. It's a lot to try to digest. And I really couldn't think of anybody better to bring on than Pat Garofalo, who is now the president of the Minnesota Grocers Association, but longtime Minnesota lawmaker, Republican, who is also somebody who's just kind of really good at seeing the whole picture and all sides of things and not really taking sides as much, Pat. That's how I think of you. Hopefully that's accurate.
Well, thanks for having me on, Amy. I appreciate the compliments, and please keep them coming. I'm always susceptible to flattery, so.
Well, that's how we keep you coming, by just kind of inflating the ego every time. No, I'm just kidding. No, really, genuinely, we appreciate having you because I know you're not afraid to kind of call things out when you see them on both sides, but also, give credit where it's due. So let's start with these tariffs. Walk us through kind of your reaction to what's happening now with this, I guess what President Trump is calling a total reset. Because when you and I talked back in January, February, this was not looking so good, especially for Minnesota.
Yep, and thanks again for having me, Amy. Yeah. The important thing is that when it comes to trade negotiations, a couple of months ago, the public and the investment market that speculates didn't really have an idea of what was going to happen. They were thinking the worst thing possible was going to happen. We'd have supply chain disruptions, higher prices, less commerce, a shrinking economy, and a recession. And with today's news, the markets are speculating that this is good news, that we're going to restart the supply chain and that there's going to be a couple of benefits. Number one, as a result of this, it's going to mean more manufacturing in the United States, not only for our domestic markets, but also for exports to China and other places. In addition to that, by having some more Chinese involvement, it's going to reduce the fentanyl trade. That's been an important part of the conversations. And then third and finally is just having stability so that the products that are part of our supply chain that are integrated into the U.S. economy that are produced in China, that this high tariff that we had is going to be reduced. And really that high tariff rate was functioning as an embargo. It made things so cost prohibitive it made no sense to buy them. So that's why you're seeing the market turn around. This is really good news in terms of the short-term and long-term prospects for our economy. And that's why the markets are cheering it. It's good news.
Yeah, but let me ask you about the sort of direct and collateral damage that's maybe happened in the last couple of months. I mean, are we at a place where we're kind of stopping the bleeding here, or has just so much damage been done up until now, especially for smaller businesses?
Well, Amy, it's important to remember that a lot of these tariffs, those who purchase and work with importers, they saw this coming, so they had stocked up on a lot of goods. They had accelerated their orders to get those in before the higher tariffs had gone into effect. Now, the U.S. economy is like a giant oil tanker. You just don't turn it around on a dime. Yeah. It takes time to shape that, so that we are likely to see some increased prices in terms of distribution mechanisms, because now everyone's going to be trying to move their product at the same time. So this is not going to be as relevant domestically. You're not going to see this impacting food supply, but you are likely to see higher shipping costs as they fill up these freights and we restart imports. But all in all, this is good news. We want to see stable trade relations with China and other countries. Beyond that, if just having that predictability As we have more of a policy now of having more of our manufacturing in the United States, you're seeing a policy that differentiates domestic production of essential goods versus things that we don't really care are made here. Candidly, if we have things like T-shirts made in other countries, we're fine with that. But when it comes to critical minerals, when it comes to manufacturing components that are essential to national security or healthcare, there's a rightful focus by the Trump administration to have those be domestically produced, so we're not dependent on foreign nations.
Yeah. There was, not to harp too much on the past, but I know you and I talked a lot about this on the show. There was a deep and serious concern about, Minnesota's farmers and the exports here and, how that might affect things. So, hindsight's 2020. We can all look back and go, oh, well, see, we didn't really have to worry about that. But I mean, it really did affect a lot of people, either mentally, strategically, things like that. It's been a difficult couple of months for a lot of people.
Well, businesses in general, whether it's farmers or otherwise, they don't live in the present; they live in the future. And when the future is uncertain, that causes problems for strategic planning and making investments. And so, particularly when it comes to China, we're one of the chief exporters of soybeans to China, and without the Chinese market, farmers who are growing soybeans in the United States, whether it's in Minnesota or other places, they're going to have some serious concerns. So hopefully we're seeing that this is a thawing of relations, that things are improving, that again, we're seeing better access for American products in these foreign markets, but also that we're not going to see some of those punitive tariffs that would result in higher prices for many of the goods that Americans are producing or are purchasing.
Okay. So can we switch topics here and talk a little bit about prescription drugs? And obviously, you're president of the Minnesota Grocers Association. Why are we asking you about this? But this is something I saw you on social media last night talking a little bit about, obviously, given your background and your history here as a lawmaker in Minnesota. When the nation looks at this executive order and hears, wow, 30 to 80% decrease in the cost of our prescription drugs, and he says almost immediately, I think across the board, people are probably celebrating that. Is there any concern rolled into this as far as you're concerned?
Yes, well, President Trump is a salesman, and sometimes the salesman will take the most optimistic scenario or outline that scenario. Here's the reality: is that if the U.S. government, as a purchaser of pharmaceuticals, is going to negotiate a better price, that's a good thing. And that helps out Americans. It helps out the market overall. However, if the U.S. government is going to try to set prices, not by negotiating prices, but setting the price, that's not going to work. We learned this 5,000 years ago when the Egyptians tried setting the price of salt. Price controls didn't work then, and they don't work now. So we'll see as we see this policy, this executive order coming forward, we're going to learn a lot more about what works and what doesn't work. But one thing that the president is completely right about right now is that the United States is subsidizing the rest of the nation, the rest of the world, when it comes to research and development dollars in the pharmaceutical industry. The same medicine in Canada and Western Europe is far cheaper than the medicine that same medicine purchased in the United States. And so we are subsidizing for the world these pharmaceutical life-saving medications. And it is high time that these European nations are paying the appropriate amount for this, that we're no longer subsidizing them. So as American prices go down, again, through negotiations, not price controls, if they're negotiated to lower prices, that's going to be made up for. So hopefully the pharmaceutical industry can keep their dollars in research and development, but they can have those dollars paid by the people who are using medicine in Canada and other portions of the world. Yeah.
President Trump's approval ratings has it started to decline in recent months to lower numbers. Do you think that between the China pending deal here, and then also if he can get this done with prescription drugs, I mean, does that sort of seal things for him as far as being a quote unquote success in these first 6 months in office?
I would never say anything is sealed for any political candidate, but I would say this, that good news is good news for America, right? And to the degree that it benefits the president, that's good news. To the degree that it benefits the nation, it's even better news. And right now, what we see is we continue to see consumers in the middle of the middle income consumers, the bottom end of the economy, who are continually under financial pressure. And so whether it is price relief in the form of lower energy prices, which we've seen recently as oil prices have come down, if it's lower interest rates, which still haven't happened yet, or whether it's getting rid of tariffs on imports, anything that puts more flexibility and more purchasing power into the hands of American consumers, that's good news for the country. Whether it benefits President Trump or someone else, they can figure that out. But at the end of the day, right now, a lot of people are getting squeezed, and we need policies that are improving affordability. We don't need the government making things more expensive.
All right. Well, thanks, Pat. I really appreciate your time today and kind of insight.
And Amy, one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I tease this on social media, I got to give my pick. Your can't miss lock sports gambling pick of the day. Take the Minnesota Timberwolves -5 points over Golden State tonight. It's not even going to be a close game. Wolves are going to bury them. As always, consult a financial advisor before making any true financial decisions.
Okay, so one more quick question. So why didn't sports betting make it through, Pat? It was teed up at the end of last session a year ago now. We were like, okay, 2025, that's the year that we're going to get this through. Not me, but that the state of Minnesota is going to get this through. What happened?
Well, it's just a fight over who gets to make money off it. The tribal entities want to preserve their casino monopoly and extend that into sports gambling. The horse racing tracks and other entities want to be able to share in that market. And so the government ultimately will decide who that marketplace is going to belong to. And until they reach an agreement on how those funds are going to be, or who's going to be allowed to compete in that arena, you're going to have this sort of black market state where people either are using bookies, using Caribbean sports books, or God forbid, getting in their car and driving to Iowa like I do to place bets. So until they resolve that issue of who's going to make money off it, there's going to be a stalemate.
Did the other side of this just do a really effective job at bringing enough data and concern about things like gambling, out of control gambling, things like that? Did that play a part in it at all?
Well, I think that whenever you regulate a vice, whether it's tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, gambling, there's going to be negative side effects, but it just comes back to the argument of, are we better off with a regulated industry or having it operate in the shadows of a black market? And I think the biggest fight right now, there's always going to be ancillary issues, but the biggest fight right now is literally who gets to make money off sports gambling. The tribes, from their perspective, they've got a pretty lucrative casino monopoly in Minnesota, and they don't want to cede that when they're going into sports gambling. They want to preserve that monopoly. The horse racing tracks, they're currently involved in sports gambling, right? Pari-mutuel wagering. They want to play a role in that process of offering that product, and that sort of butting of heads, that's the conflict. Everything else, there's people on both sides of the aisle who have principled opposition to any form of gambling expansion. But at the end of the day, this is a fight about who gets to make money off it, and because it's a regulated industry, government is the one that gets to decide who the players will be.
All right, Pat Garofalo, president of the Minnesota Grocers Association, longtime state representative. There aren't many people, Pat, who I can bring on this show on live streaming and ask about tariffs, prescription drugs, and sports gambling all in the same conversation. So thank you for that. I start calling you Pat MacGyver. I think that's going to be your new nickname. Pat MacGyver.
Well, I guess if that's what you call me, it's not the worst thing I've been called, so I can live with that. That's okay. It was great seeing you, Amy.
Okay,
Thanks again for
you.
having me on.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. Have a great day.